patriarchy. Now, basically, the spheres of dominion. Only men are to be in the public square. Women are only to be in the sphere of the home. Therefore, women are not permitted to vote, because that would be function in the public sphere, or the civil sphere. Women, and that's another reason why girls are not to be sent off to college. They will be out from under the sphere of the home. But they also use pragmatic arguments, too, as they do about voting. They say it divides the family. Anything that divides the family as a group in a room together is vilified. And a woman may go to her husband's place of business and serve him, but there again you have this physical covering concept going on. Education of children, only homeschooling with Christian curriculum, and private school is now discouraged, not necessarily sin. No women are to be trained outside the home. And in many of these homes, because it seems very pragmatic, why pour a lot of resources when you've got 10 kids and sons to train? You know, you don't want to train your daughter in quantum physics. So it's kind of a pragmatic view that resources are provided more readily to boys. Now, this has actually caught the attention of a law professor, and there's an article awaiting publication in the California Law Review, citing Vision Form in particular and the practices that come through there as a possible gender-related violation of the Federal Equal Protection Clause, because girls are not being provided opportunities within the home. And this is terrible for the homeschooling movement. It just breaks my heart. Concerning a father and his younger children, sons are to spread the fame and glory of their father. Daughters' hearts are to be kept by their fathers. And they are to train as a helpmeet for their husband until they're given through the courtship process. They're to remain the helpmeet of the father. Now, there was a lot of criticism of this because it connotates a spousal relationship. But for the most part, they've stuck by the concept. Concerning a father and his adult children, they follow the courtship model, such as put forth by Gothard and Linval. Married couples are required to submit and approve to the approval of their parents, even after they're married, through a concept called multi-generational faithfulness. Here's another kind of twist of the language. What does that sound like? It sounds like generation after generation serves God. But when it's convenient, they use it to support patriarchy, and Don Vino makes light of this concept in his article, Who Will Be First in the Kingdom, and says you have to appeal to Uncle Ned before you do anything, rather than the leave and cleave principle we find in Genesis. Concerning the sphere of the church, they observe a plurality of elders. This is actually used quite often to support a lack of accountability. They don't like pastors. Not all of the groups, but some of the groups don't like pastors because they feel it competes with the patriarch in the family and everybody. Oh, sure.
The title of your slide is Biblical Confession for Uniting Church and Family. Is this like a document? Or?
That's the document in Vision Form on their website, as is the document of Biblical Patriarchy. That one was more for family. This one's concerning the church.
Thanks.
Sorry. Got so much material. So they actually, one of the people I mentioned formed his own parachurch organization, formed his own home group, which turned into a church, formed his own denomination, what appears to be a denomination. They don't have a pastor. He denied being the pastor, but it turned out he was the only elder for a period of about 3 years. So, you know, it's sort of loopholes. They use some of these things to kind of work around, avoid accountability. Then we see the adoption of non-normative families. If you are in a non-normative family, you need to be adopted by a normative family so that you can participate fully in the life of the church. Separate activities are vilified, such as age-appropriate education of children. No Sunday school, no youth groups, no nothing. Family unit together all the time. Now, the father is viewed as patriarch. I believe that that's one of the reasons why you don't have age-appropriate education. Because if you have a special bonding with an authority figure or a teacher, that competes with the patriarch. And again, they have the language that they use in that document seems to be reactive against, regarding maybe a pastor that overstepped his authority. And so they're not very supportive of church leadership in the form of a pastor, although some of them do have pastors. Intervention from outside the family is vilified because the patriarch rules and reigns over his family. And then they talk about heart-level relationships with the father. And I don't know what this means. I tried to contact the author that first used this term, and he would not correspond with me at all. So I don't really know what that means, except that perhaps the system is so mechanistic that they have to try and reinfuse some kind of organic, loving, natural stuff in there. I don't know. And they do like home groups and cell groups. What are the implications? Winding up here. The Fundamental Baptist Fellowship International in 2006 passed a resolution deeming the family integrated church as errant and schismatic. They encourage the change of theology and the philosophy of the churches. It does violence to the local church authority. Again, it prefers an Old Testament patriarchy as opposed to a New Testament ecclesiology. They make the false claim that the destruction of the family is due to age-appropriate education in churches. They prefer a postmillennial theology, and it is oddly inclusive based on unique ideology. Oops. Now, a little bit about this heart-level relationship stuff. What I believe the dynamics are explaining are really shame-based relationships, which comes out of psychology, I know, but hey, I'm a nurse. Jeff Van Vonderen, the co-author of The Subtle Power of Spiritual Abuse, has also written Families Where Grace is in Place, and he defines this not as shame-based relationship, but as curse-based relationship. And this wasn't written in regards to the patriarchy movement, but against shame-based relationships in general. He uses a mnemonic and spells out curse. C is control, U is unforgiveness, R is reactivity, S is shaming, and E is ego-centered. Excellent book. Now, this corresponds to the literature regarding spiritual abuse, absolutely without exaggeration. I believe that spiritual abuse is just essentially talking about thought reform using different language. Coming from a clinical perspective, both frameworks, both paradigms appealed to me. I believe that it's identical. It's just using different terms and different language and classifying things a little differently. And again, Robert Lifton wrote the gold standard. And if you're unfamiliar, you need to go to Paul Martin's lecture at 1:30 or download it if you're listening to this by MP3. But particularly, I mean, they meet all the criteria. But in particular, the loading of the language through the manipulation of language and through really a postmodern advertising type of approach. And milieu control through this neo-tribal fear of culture. And these are two things that they do very well. They objectify women and children, I believe, because through an inappropriate use of family members to meet both religious, emotional, and frankly psychological needs. I borrow that definition from psychology concerning recovery, addictions, eating disorders, battered women, self-injury, girls that cut themselves. If you walked into a clinic and you had a clinical problem with these things, and you talked to a counselor, they would tell you that this defines incest. Now, not sexual incest, but the inappropriate use of family members to satisfy other needs, not necessarily sex. It is, however, gender related, which is why I believe there's such a gender focus. And if you ascribe to these models, if you read Pia Mellody's literature on love avoidance, the men in patriarchy correspond very closely to the love avoidant model, which, you can throw that out if you want. I throw it out there for you. They follow the courtship model. Go online and find Robin Phillips' critique of Courtship. That's another 2